very warm welcome to you. You're listening to the Music Business Buddy with me, Johnny Amos, podcasting out of Birmingham in England. I'm the author of the book, The Music Business for Music Creators, available in hardback, paperback and ebook format. I'm a music creator as a writer, producer with a variety of credits. I'm a consultant, an artist manager and a senior lecturer in both music business and music creation. Wherever you are and whatever you do, consider yourself welcome to this podcast and to a part of the community around it. I'm here to try and educate and inspire music creators from all over the world in their quest to achieving their goals by gaining a greater understanding of the business of music. Okay, so in this week's episode, I'm going to take a look at the current state of AI in music. It's very difficult to actually summarise this on a whole, on any form of conclusive level, because it's an ongoing thing. It changes all the time. But over the last 10 episodes, 3 of those episodes I've spent interviewing createch and AI tech startup specialists that build tools for music creators. I'm going to look at some of the clips of the things that they said, build some inferences together with some other information and give you an overview of exactly where AI is at in 2025. Are you ready? Here we go. Okay, so we have to start, of course, by thinking about music discovery and recommendation, right? Personalized recommendations from streaming services that use AI algorithms to analyze listener habits and make recommended music choices tailored to individual preferences. You know, Spotify probably do that better than anybody else, probably followed them by YouTube. But in any case, that, we forget about it as being AI, right? But that is very much AI. There's also a very, very in-depth song analysis that AI can bring. Things that can analyse musical characteristics like tempo, key, genre, speechability, danceability, provide very, very valuable insights for both artists and listeners and also music users. Music discovery kind of follows on from that, right? AI can really, really help discover new music by identifying trends, analysing, popularity, similar artists, things like that. AI is also used on a scouting level in order to find acts that are beginning to gain traction online. There's a lot of algorithms out there that are subscriber based from record companies, from A&Rs, from managers, etc., that they use to track talent. Very often, if you look at some of the startups that create that kind of technology, they're often quickly swallowed up by major conglomerates so that they can only that company can access that information. It makes perfect sense. This is a business after all. But the point is this: AI is used on a reactive and predictive level in order to try and make informed judgments as to when or if an artist will break, because this then informs investors, record companies, etc., as to whether they want to invest in an artist. AI is, of course, used on a creative level when it comes to composition, arrangement, production, sound replication. AI can recreate the sounds of instruments and voices, allowing for the creation of unique soundscapes or the replication of specific sounds or voices or instruments. AI can also generate backing tracks that adapt in real time to a musician's performance, creating dynamic and live experiences, etc. Also, it comes when it comes to inspiration and idea generation. Now, this is not without difficulties, of course, right? There are huge issues around copyright and ownership. AI-generated music raises questions about copyright and ownership and the originality of AI-created works, especially when AI is trained on existing music. I've mentioned this before, guys, but I'll mention this again. Just imagine analysing 20 Coldplay songs and using that as input to create the output to create your own Coldplay-style song. It could then be argued, well, Coldplay didn't write it. Well, if it hadn't been for those other 20 songs, that song wouldn't exist. And that there lies the problem that has dominated the agenda in the music industry over the last 2 years. Now, combine that with the kind of, if you will, public worry about AI replacing humans, and together you've got a perfect storm of ultimate fear of what is coming next. Now, it is that together that can sometimes create an ill-informed judgment as to what is actually happening. So I thought, well, I need to become a little bit more informed about this myself. Of course I do. Everybody does, because all this stuff is constantly changing around us. So I interviewed 3 leading experts in the AI world that are building tools for music creators. And I wanted to look at how ethically they were doing that. What were their systems being trained upon? So let me just go over a few key highlights from some of the interviews that I've done over the last few weeks to show you a little bit more of an insight so that you can create your own view. Okay, so when I interviewed Anne-Marie Gaillard from DAACI, I asked her what was the overarching purpose and goal of what DAACI is trying to build, and this is what she said.
Just basically making tools that enhance and amplify the creative process, but never replace artists.
I really, really like Anne-Marie's answer there. It's the answer we all want to hear as music creators and those that care about the process of making music. But in order to dig into that a little bit further, we have to kind of understand what that actually looks like in terms of what they're building and what it caters for. So I asked her a little bit more about the process of making music, and this is what she said.
I think we always have to think about, what makes music? How do we make music? And I think we, as humans, we write from a very human place, from our soul, from our life experiences, what times when we've been happy, times when we've been sad. I don't believe any tech can ever or should ever replace that. But I think AI done in the right way, in the ethical way, can just help us get to places a bit faster.
Okay, get in places a little faster. That's one of the common themes here in some of the interviews that I've done. And that's really, really good, isn't it? If something can save us time, then it's got to be worthwhile. In fact, actually, that's a common pattern amongst many AI tools, isn't it? But let's just pause here for a minute and think about a timeline, right? We can actually put a fairly close timeline together here on the things that have happened so far in AI and music in this decade. In fact, we can actually pinpoint it to, let's go to December 2023. That is when Suno became accessible on a mainstream level. And it actually, I think a lot of people kind of made up their mind about AI music, perhaps based upon Suno, because it was incorporated into Copilot and, with Microsoft. So it became something that was at the fingertips for anybody, and someone could build a track very, very, very quickly. But if you really kind of analyse it, you can kind of go, oh, actually, I recognise that little bit there because it's taken from this song over here, and there was no permission behind it. It's very, very, very different. In fact, light years away from what DAACI have built, because it's not trained on data of copywritten material. It's trained by musicians, so it can be reactive in the same way as another musician around you can.
And sometimes you just need a bit of inspiration. And I think these tools can kind of just help generate, get the brain going a bit and, generate some new ideas. Certainly that's what we're doing with our tools at DAACI. So, and there are other tools out there that are doing similar things. So I think, done in the right way, these are powerful tools that are there just to kind of co-pilot with us.
Okay, I like that, right? Something that can co-pilot with us, right? Video makers have tools that can help them to edit something faster or to change the shape, the background, the texture of something. So in many ways, it's kind of not really too dissimilar from that. Making music, of course, it can feel and often is a very, very personal process. And so therefore, to inject something robotic into it can feel immoral. It reminds me of that old kind of, Jeff Goldblum quote from Jurassic Park all those years ago, the movie where it said, just because we could doesn't mean that we should, It kind of made me think about that when I was interviewing some of these people, because you kind of go, we can build something that can do this and this and this over here, but should we? Well, that's another moral question, isn't it? And that's a question for you and you only to answer, by the way. The purpose of this right now is to just shed a little bit more light on it. And I know that people are scared about this. And so does Declan McGlynn, Chief Creative Officer of VoiceSwap. This is what he said about this.
Right now, there's a lot of fear and a lot of trepidation about AI, much of which is justified.
It is justified, of course. Yeah, Declan and I both agreed on that, as I'm sure you would too. I think, though, one of the things that makes us petrified are some of the things that have happened sort of, a year, 2 years ago. I know, the grand old scheme of things, that's not that long ago. But in the AI world, that was like a lifetime ago, because so much has changed. One of the key things is the clampdown on big companies training their models on old copywritten material. I boldly predict by the end of this decade that will start to clean itself up. And actually, what we're about to look at next is a good example of that, which is the idea of remunerating vocalists and also musicians moving forward on their AI model. Now, bear with me on this one, guys. One of the things that has come up recently is this. When an artist, a performing artist, signs the rights of their recorded music to a record company, to a distributor, to whoever moving forward, should they be signing away the use of their AI voice model to go with it? I don't have the answer for that, and I'm not sure anyone does right now, but it's certainly a factor to consider. Now, traditionally, we know that intellectual property in the music industry is very often something that is collected on a retrospective level. It's been like that for decades. It's fine. However, in the AI world, it would be good to be able to set a barrier in which somebody wants to use somebody else's AI voice model and they have to pay for it there and then. I was hoping that we would see that at some point, and thankfully it is something that VoiceSwap actually do. Let me show you a little bit more from Declan on this.
Royalties at the point of inference, essentially. And we kind of felt like that was the right thing to do anyway. Like you said, we want to make sure that even if the song's never released, even if it's just for demo purposes or songwriting purposes or ideation purposes, the artist's still getting compensated, because at the end of the day, you're using their voice and that's their IP.
It is their IP. It's a very, very good point. By the way, how refreshing is it that somebody so senior in such an impressive tech company acknowledges that? I mean, Declan, amongst many people, this is one of the common denominators amongst the guests that I interviewed on this subject, is how much they care about this. It really, really, really comes through. It's a very, very different culture than, let's say, for example, a large company like Suno doing things very, very differently. They all kind of fall under the bracket of AI, but the reality is they are light years apart in their values. Okay, so I mentioned about the futuristic angle of AI model versus real voice model. Let's go into that a little bit deeper, because Declan has some fascinating insights on that. But everything is underpinned by law, isn't it, right? And we're in a state now where the standards of where this stuff is a little bit woolly. Let's see what Declan says about that.
Standards are still being set in the age of AI and rights and the creative industries, creator tools. We wanted to set a standard that says, yes, there is a value in converting the voice.
Okay, now let's just think about that moment where the voice is converted. Let's just assume that there's some kind of technical smart Alex out there that have got ahead of the game, right? That go, okay, let me use this over here and sample this and then pipe that into there, and then I'll pass that off as an AI voice model. What would a company like VoiceSwap do with that? This is what Declan said.
All the acapellas and all the training data gets uploaded to user model training. It's screened by BMAT to make sure there's no copyright content inside of it, because they have a database of 180 million fingerprints of audio.
Okay, pretty impressive and also very reassuring, which is good. But what role does this have on the marketplace? Because the lines get blurry between the real person and the AI voice model of that person. By the way, guys, that is a terminology that I think we're going to have to start getting used to going forward. However odd it may sound, the idea of a voice model, an AI voice model versus the actual real person, right? Because they should be two different price points. And this is something that VoiceSwap had already thought about. Have a listen to this.
It means that we can go ahead and build a marketplace where anyone can come and monetize their voice, and they can set their own terms, they can set their own price point, they can set their own licensing point if they want to have licensing at all. And eventually you can imagine having a section on VoiceSwap where it's the marketplace. You go to the marketplace, you type in, jazz, vocalist, female, Spanish, whatever, and you get, 100 responses of those voices from around the world. You can work with them passively. You can either use their AI voice model. You can upload your track without the stems, just upload the full thing. We'll use stem separation technology to split it. We'll swap out the acapella with the model you've chosen, and then you'll hear your idea in their voice before you commit to working with them. And then you can either pay to use their AI voice, or you can contact them and say, okay, cool, this sounds good. Let's get that recorded for real in the studio.
Okay, now that's fascinating, isn't it? I hope you're still with me on this. There's so much to think about here, I know. But these things are changing so quickly, so it's really good we stay on top of this, right? Let's just roll back a little bit. A few weeks ago, I did an episode about the remote marketplace and where that's at. What Declan just referred to there is kind of really the next incarnation of it, and it might not take very long to get there, considering that Suno to many people now feels kind of like old news in a way, and that was only less than 2 years ago. So it's 2025 now. By 2027, this will have evolved even further. And that was a little snapshot indication as to where it might be headed. Okay, let's move over to the realm of music production. And in particular, if you think about music production, there's so many different processes to it, isn't there? Sound design, sound selection, arrangement, all sorts of stuff. Let's just hone in on the mixing side of it, because I interviewed Dave Ronan, CEO of RoEx Audio, about a particular model that he and his team have built. He comes from a very, very, very impressive AI background, and he's built a kind of a reactive AI piece, which is something which can mix your song for you when you send it the stems. This is what he said about it in a nutshell.
For £5, basically, we can take the problems that we found, we can fix them to the best of our ability, and then we can also remix and master your track as well. So if you have stuff from I don't know, that was for me is perfect. I had stuff from 20 years ago that I made when I didn't really have a clue what I was doing, and I was able to kind of essentially remix them and remaster, and they sound a lot better now. So yeah, so that's essentially MixCheck Studio.
Okay, so that's MixCheck Studio, right? There's also a free version before it. By the way, I'm not advertising this product. They don't pay me to do this. I'm just trying to give you an honest assessment as to where things are at. The free version will tell you kind of what's wrong, let's say, with your mix, and then the Mix Checker Pro will then kind of just fix it for you. Now, the worry with that perhaps is are we taking work away from mix engineers? And that's something that I put to Dave. And actually, it's very interesting because he kind of talked about the idea of kind of leaving that final 10% in a mix as the creative part, the bit that you really, really kind of put your stamp on. And they kind of got me thinking. I've mixed a lot of records, right? And actually, the first part, the time-consuming part of mixing a record is actually the really, really kind of inane, really rather boring stuff, leveling things out, getting gain staging right, all that kind of stuff. It's the stuff that no one ever hears or no one really ever wants to hear about because it's often largely boring to anyone that's not interested in it. But the point is this, the AI does all that stuff, not the cool individual stuff. So I asked him about that, and this is what he said.
And you have a mix there ready. So you just basically need to tweak stuff if you want, or else you add your creative stuff on top. Okay,
that was a penny drop moment for me. This is a twofold purpose tool, right? This is for those people that say, do you know what, I can't afford a mix engineer and I can't get my songs to that next level, right? I'm going to use this tool to help me to get there, right? Boom, that's one type of person. But here's the real head scratcher, everybody, right? There's another market here, right? And that is for people that actually do mix. This is not there to replace them. It's for them to save time in their work so that they don't have to do that mix prep. The final 10% of the mix is really often the bit that you really put that kind of creative, unique stamp into it. And they don't do that, and they acknowledge that they don't do that. Okay, another area of music production following on from that is integration into DAWs. So if anybody's not familiar with the term DAW, DAW, Digital Audio Workstation. It's the software that's kind of like the virtual console and editing screen of where you record music in and where you mix it. Now, what RoEx have built works independently from that. It works outside that. And what Dave actually recognises is that once it's actually built inside of the DAW, it will give the company a huge advantage because it will actually make it a much more streamlined workflow. Or in other words, in English, what I really mean is if you can do this inside of your DAW and you don't have to go outside of it, you'll actually be more inclined to use it. So this is what they have done about that.
We've done that now for Bitwig, PreSonus Studio One, and Cubase as well. So, and we're expanding into as many DAWs basically as possible.
I didn't know about that.
And the beauty of that is it's because it's fully then at that point it's you can just bounce it out if you're happy with it, or you can tweak it. So it's very assistive at that point. You know what I mean? It's getting you to the 90% point, and then you can do what you want on top of that, basically.
Okay, so one of the things that we can see so far from some of the tools that are being built for music creators is that actually they are time-saving tools, and that, if we just leap outside of music for a minute, that's one of the common patterns amongst AI tools, right, is doing stuff that speeds up this process. Guys, I'll give you an example of that, right? So for this podcast, when you see the show notes and the social media blogs and the posts and all the words that go into that, right, that's not me writing it. That's AI. It's a thing called Co-Host AI. Again, this is not an advert, but I'm using AI to summarize all the things that have been said in the podcast, and then they can kind of just take the main points and put them into copy, right? That can be then used. That's AI. I mean, it doesn't feel immoral to me to want to use that tool, quite simply because it saves me about 2 hours each week to do that. So this is comparable to that, and that's one of the patterns that we're seeing here. Another example of this in the music production world would be something like Isotope's RoEx tools. Now, these are tools that they've been using for many, many years in post-production suites. So, for example, when you watch a television program or a film and you look at dialogue and you go, oh, what? They've piped this into the background or they've taken that out of the background. In theory, we shouldn't be noticing those things, but the reason that they sound so good is often because of the editing work that goes into dialogue, into voice. And it's the same with music. Why am I telling you that? Well, we can be very restorative now with certain things. You could record something on your phone whilst you're outside in the wind, and you could throw it into an RoEx tool or a piece of software, and it'll fix it. It will take out the background, and it'll do that by compressing this or doing that, or whatever. All those little parameters that make up all the sort of geekiness, if you like, of those things, they don't have to be done painstakingly for 3 hours by a human, however noble that is. I'm not entirely sure how much fun that is. Maybe it is for some people, but I'm a producer. I can tell you it's no fun, right? If I've got a tool that can do that in under a minute and it doesn't really cost very much, I'm going to do it, right? That's another example for you. Okay, so there's a little overview, guys. I wanted to share that with you. Not at any point am I ever trying to force any kind of soft narrative on the way that you think. My goodness me, we live in a free world. You can make your own mind up. But what I would say is this: take an informed viewpoint, because some of the things that grab the headlines on the subject of AI and music creator tools are things from 2 years ago, from a year ago. And if we're not careful, we can make up our mind on a subject and just go, oh, that's my understanding of that. And actually, we kind of maybe didn't get it right. What's actually been done now amongst some of the companies out there that are building for music is actually very, very ethical, very fair and very remunerative, which means that it's actually creating a new aspect of the ecosystem that is music creation. Anybody that I've spoken to on this podcast so far on this subject, nobody, by their own admission or by their actions, are doing anything to replace humans, but just merely to assist humans. And that's something that has come across to me. Now, of course, I'm painting a positive picture here because that's the kind of person I am. I am well aware of the more darker, more sinister aspects of AI, but I do believe that they are being softly eradicated by new standards, and what they're being replaced with is a far more ethical approach to all of this stuff. Now, I've focused largely there on music creator tools. I hope in all my heart that that is the thing that's most useful to you. But of course, as I mentioned earlier in today's episode, there are other aspects of where AI is used in music on a business level, which is mirrored by how it's used in other industries. Anyway, there's a little snapshot. I'll maybe do another one of these in a year or maybe less than that on what happens next. But that's where things perhaps sit right now. Watch this space. It's going to change. It always does, especially in this world. Okay, until next time, everybody, have a great day and may the force be with you.